Hi everyone, my name's Christine Dacey and I'm lucky enough to be the CEO of the Churchill Trust of Australia. And I'm here with Nadine Mannion, and we're together going to try and give you as much information as we can in this hour as we approach the opening of the 2026 application round. I would very much like to start by acknowledging that me and my team are based on beautiful Ngunnawal and Ngambri land in the ACT. And I acknowledge the elders who have cherished this land on behalf of us all for generations and generations. We're very privileged to live, learn, laugh, and live on these lands. This session, as I said, is about giving you as much information in bite-sized and readily digestible pieces as we can to help you along the way. If you have questions, please pop them in the Q&A box in your screen. I'm going to do 4 or 5 slides and talk for 10 minutes, and then Nadine's going to take you through what it looked like from an applicant's point of view. So we might actually answer some of those questions for you on the way through. There are no dumb questions. Please feel free to ask. I would also say to you that there are a number of resources on our website. There is a tab called Become a Fellow, where there are questions and answers, and there are also other resources like a draft application and some animations sort of breaking down the process step by step. So we really encourage people to go and have a good poke around there as well. We do have closed captioning going on in this session, and like all closed captioning, there's just that little bit of a delay. So just give that a few minutes. And we will also be putting this session up, as we have done with other information sessions, on our YouTube channel. So if you get to the end of the session and you think, I haven't asked the right question, you can go and check out those FAQs, check out some other recordings, or you can get in contact with the team. And I think that the team are also popping that question and answer link in the Q&A for you as well. I will tend to focus the questions on those that I think are the most broadly applicable. Everyone's life is a bit different and interesting. So if you've got something that's really niche and specific to you, by all means ask, but I'll try and cover the most common questions we get for the most number of people. But as I say, don't worry too much. If you've got something you want to ask about you, then by all means, we can do that. We will stick tightly to the hour. People have got lives and lunches to get on at 1 o'clock with. As I say, lots of opportunities, and the round's open for quite a while yet. All right, without any further ado, I'm going to step into the first slide. And basically, just a quick bit of our history. The fellowship program was conceived of about 60 years ago, and it's designed to be a living legacy to one of the world's greatest change makers from the last century. And Churchill believed very much in the power of individuals to make change and to work for the good of society. And so when there was lots of talk about what to do to honour his legacy, a fellowship program like this was what they came up with. And the focus really is on your ability as an individual to make change. So really back yourself in if you think you can. And that's part of the ethos of the program. The funding for the fellowships came from people like yourselves, everyday Australians who donated over 60 years ago, and we've nurtured the money. And with that, we have been able to fund close to 5,000 fellows in 60 years. We pick about 100 people a year. And so we're very grateful for those donors, and we take our stewardship of that money and this program incredibly seriously. So what is fellowship? We think it's a life-changing and unique opportunity. It is not an academic scholarship, and it is not just a trip overseas. So we sort of focus on what it is and also what it's not. And we're really big on saying it's open to people from all walks of life. You do not require an academic qualification. There is no one single pathway into becoming a fellow. It is about you, your project, and your ability to communicate with the selection panel about how you think you can make a difference in your community. It is an overseas travel fellowship. It is an immersive experience. So minimum 4 weeks, maximum 8 weeks. where you get to go and meet new people, observe new practices. Perhaps you do a bit of research, perhaps you do some observational in the field learning, whatever that looks like for you. And it's highly dependent on the topic that you pick. A few people have said to me, can I just travel in Australia? And that's not what this fellowship is about. So we try and be really clear about that. There are some very limited exceptions where we will allow travel in Australia, say if there are very remote communities, but 99.9% of our fellows travel overseas. And so that's something that you should absolutely have in your mind. Topics can be on anything, and I really do mean that. We have botanists, we have pianists, we have neurosurgeons, we have sheep shearers, we have pirate ship restorers, we have cheesemakers, we have domestic violence advocates, we have environmental engineers. And so the breadth of what we will look at in terms of our fellows knows really only the bounds of your imagination. And I guess last but not least, we would say a fellowship doesn't stop when you come back from your travels. You then become part of the amazing alumni network of fellows across Australia. And amazingly, some fellows even move overseas when they finish their travels. So, you never know where you're going to run into a Churchill Fellow, and they really are wonderful people doing wonderful things. Okay, for eligibility, you simply have to be 18 years or over and be an Australian citizen or a permanent resident. There is no upper age limit. There are no other hidden tips and tricks in there. And we do send people of all ages. Last year, we picked a young 20-year-old girl from the Margaret River region. And in other years, we've sent people who are 60, 70, and 80 and older overseas. What we offer you is a fellowship payment. On average, last year, that fellowship payment was $39,700. And that covers your airfares, your accommodation, your reasonable travel costs, and we give it to you in the form of a living allowance. We work with you to pay airfares and whatever. So it's a pretty generous investment, and our fellows consistently report to us that it is sufficient for their needs. We can offer an individual tailored support and travel support for people who are coming from very remote areas, or those who have special needs. For example, this year we've sent a young girl overseas who is in a wheelchair. So again, if you have special circumstances, you're welcome to talk to us about them. We don't want those to be a barrier to you traveling. But again, most of you, it will just be the normal fellowship experience. Your project has to be an individual project. Don't come to us with a team application. The only exception we have are joint fellowships, which are very specifically around First Nations projects, where an Indigenous person might be working with a non-Indigenous person or another Indigenous person. And those really are the only fellowships where you can be working with someone else. I'll just briefly mention sponsorships. We're really lucky that over the years, a number of people have provided sponsored funding to us. You will see if you proceed to doing an application that you might want to tag a sponsorship that you might think be a good match for you. I really, really encourage you to don't get too worried about it. If you think, oh, this would be a good match, and then you go away and think, oh, I picked the wrong thing, don't worry about it. We actually do the matching of the sponsorships behind the scenes. So it won't rule you in and it won't rule you out. So please just, if you think something's a good match, by all means, point it out. But if you don't worry about it. Okay, some tips and tricks. When you are looking at your application, and as I said, there's a dummy application on our website. And this is a really competitive process, right? Every year we get about 1,000 applications for about 100 fellowships. So you need to be really crisp and clear in telling us, why is your project important? Who's it going to help and how is it going to help them? Why are you the right person? I just really encourage people, there's no place for modesty, people, and try very hard to not let your imposter syndrome get in the way of thinking, I couldn't be a fellow. We really love having fellows who are highly individual And really, I think most people have got a great story to tell and great capacity. In terms of telling us where you want to go and what you want to do, and I'm sure Nadine will have kind of some really interesting insights into this. I always work on that because you have to populate the form with where you think you want to go, how long you want to go for, because that tells us, what the length of it might be, what the cost might be, and it helps the panel understand what focus you are and how prepared you are. I always say to people, work on a 70-30 rule. You've kind of got to have enough of an idea that it makes sense and it's a serious proposal for the panel to consider. But we understand that things shift and change all the time. What I can't have is you doing an application which says, I'm going to go to Timor-Leste, I'm going to go to the Philippines, I'm going to go to Vietnam, Laos, and then I'm going to go to Japan for 4 weeks, and then coming back and saying, oh, actually, now I'm going to go to Canada, Finland, Estonia, like it has to be sensible enough that the panel can make an informed judgment because that's actually what they're assessing you on, right? The sort of, flow of what it's going to look like. That's what I always say in terms of itinerary. What else can I tell you? The opening date is 9 o'clock on the 27th of February, and the closing date is 5 p.m. on the 30th of April. Shortlisted applicants are interviewed in May and July. If you come from either New South Wales or Victoria, you will actually have 2 interviews. Because of the size of that pools of applicants that we get. Other states have a single interview process. The interview dates are on our website, and I really encourage you to please go and have a look at those dates, because if you can't attend your final interview in person, then you will be unable to progress. And let me explain that to you, why we have such a hard and fast rule about that. The whole DNA of our fellowship is human being to human being, highly immersive. You can do some things over the screen. This is a really good example. We can, give you lots of information, but the panel need to meet you. They need to talk to you. And so if you cannot get to those dates and you have to do it in your state, we can't have, people flying all around the country, then you need to think, is this the right year for me? And should you be selected, you would also be required to attend an in-person mandatory induction session in Canberra in October. So the fellowship is really, it's a lot more than the 4 to 8 weeks of travel. There's a few big pieces that we need from people. And we think that's being true to the spirit and intent of our fellowship program. If you are successful, it will be announced in September. And you then have from the 1st of November through till the end of January 2028. So you've got a good 15-month period to do your travel. Then you come back and write your report and a whole bunch of other things. But, I try not to get the cart before the horse. I try really hard to just get people to the point of how does it feel to kind of get your application going. The other question I will just say to you that I get a lot is how do I choose my referees? And I'm sure Nadine will have kind of insights to share with you here. But the bottom line is 1 personal and 1 professional. And we do require you to get those referees to us actually 2 days before the application round closes, because we have been told in years past that it's one of the most stressful parts of applying. And so we actually compel you to do that bit so that you've got that last 48 hours so that you can really be honing your application. Oh, the other thing I will tell you is we get a lot of feedback on is that the application it's a character limit, not a word limit. So that means every full stop, every comma, every space you make counts. And the discipline that's involved in getting that right, really, it feels like a punishment, but it's designed to help you really polish and hone your key messages. Because when you get to an interview, it's only 15 minutes and you've got to be able to kind of hit the ground running. And we also have a 60-second video pitch that you do with it. Same sort of thinking. There's the written application, which is tight. There's the 60-second video, which I'm reliably informed is actually only 58 seconds. But it's all designed to get you to be as crisp and concise as possible around your ideas. So I've covered referees, I've covered bits and pieces. I'm going to stop talking now because we've got Nadine with us, and I think hearing from a fellow is just so rich. So over to you, Nadine.
Great, thank you so much, Christine. I will just share my slides, which I hope you can see there. Fantastic. So, as Christine said, my name's Nadine Mannion. I was lucky enough to be a 2020 Churchill Fellow, sorry. I was awarded the Dr. Ian C. Medjet Churchill Fellowship, which is a sponsored Churchill Fellowship, to investigate vocal technique and care of the transgender singing voice in the applied vocal studio. And this is a little map of my itinerary and where I went in the end. I first found out about the Churchill Fellowship actually through another Churchill Fellow, a previous Churchill Fellow. My husband came home from work and mentioned that someone at his work called Kate Mahoney had just come back from this amazing trip that she was talking about, where she went over as a Churchill Fellow to look into the design of sports shoes for sports women. And the reasoning behind this was because a lot of women sports people were getting hurt because the design of shoes was actually based on research that had been done on men rather than women. And I immediately thought, what a brilliant idea. I can't believe this isn't research we haven't done before. I can't believe more people aren't talking about this. And it immediately lined up with the work that I was doing that I felt was really important but kept going under the radar, which was working with trans singing voices, training those voices and working out how to change our pedagogical approaches to fit with voices that maybe didn't sit in the narrative of how we had learnt to do that previously. And every time I spoke to people about this, people said, what a great idea, but nobody was actually doing anything to further this. So I started looking a bit into the Churchill Fellowship. I had a look at some of the projects that have been supported online, and it felt like the Churchill Fellowship was a place for these slightly niche projects, these projects that maybe didn't quite have a home elsewhere, but could feasibly have a really large community impact. So I started my process of applying for the Churchill Fellowship, perhaps a little naively at the beginning. And when I went into the actual application, I started to have a lot of doubts and questions about whether I was actually biting off more than I could chew. So my first instinct was that I was not the right person to do this. The people I knew that were Churchill Fellows were the people in my industry. They were the people I looked up to. They were close to kind of the last 10 years of their career or so, and that wasn't me at the time. So I started asking myself a few questions before I actually got into the application process. The first thing I kind of asked was, did I actually have the right networks in order to disseminate the things that I had found out on my Churchill Fellow and actually make some change when I came back? And when I looked at that, while I wasn't at the absolute peak of my industry, I actually had a lot of connections across different areas. I worked in a tertiary institution, but I also worked closely with the trans community. I also worked for a community organization. I also had a private studio. So while I wasn't the leader in all of those areas, I actually did have a lot of really valuable connections. I looked at whether I had the right level of knowledge to actually sit across from these experts and feel like I could ask the right questions or not. And did I have that right knowledge to sit across from the experts? And I really felt like I had done a lot of the research on my side, that I did have some really important questions. Being somebody at the coalface who was working with singers constantly, I felt like I had really practical questions that could influence people's experiences as opposed to just theoretical ones as well. Then I asked if I had really exhausted everything in Australia. Could I do this from Australia, or did I actually have to travel overseas? And particularly because I was working with the trans community, I decided that I needed to travel overseas in order to speak to people about what were really personal topics, to build trust that maybe couldn't be built over Zoom as well. And then I looked at if I was ready to take this on. As Christine mentioned, a Churchill is more than just that travel. It's planning before you go, it's traveling over there, it's writing a report, and it's also being willing to come back and make the change. being willing to advocate for things, put in the effort to actually change the community in Australia. So I felt like after looking at all of these things, I actually felt like maybe I was a really great person to do this, even though I wasn't what I thought a Churchill Fellow was to begin with. So that kind of took me to actually designing my project, which the application really kind of takes you through quite easily. The things that I really wanted to look at and I think made a big difference for me were, in doing my itinerary, was making sure that I named specifically who I wanted to see, and then also really looked at what I wanted to learn from those people. And I think being really specific in the application allowed me to show that I'd done that research before I started the process, and that I knew specifically what I wanted and what questions I wanted answered as well. I would, in hindsight, change a few things about my application. I think that one of my thoughts was, as Christine said, you don't necessarily want to add new places at the end. So I thought if I add every place I possibly want to go, I could always take things away. But I think perhaps that could have come across as an unrealistic plan for travel. So in hindsight, I would look at what is a very realistic plan for travel, and I think it's less than what you think you can achieve. So it takes a lot of time to absorb the knowledge. Often when I met people, they then wanted me to meet 5 other people that day. So I think actually having less but being really specific would have helped too. I also think looking at the order of people I wanted to see in terms of the information I wanted to garner, as opposed to geographically what made sense, I think would have made a little bit more sense for my application as well, seeing a lot of people with the same information first before moving on to another level, as opposed to just dotting myself across the country. When it came to the referees, I think when I looked at personal referees, because I wasn't somebody in a really high leadership role at the time, I felt that it was really important, even in the personal referee, to get strong referees in leadership roles to show the support of me as somebody earlier in my career in that process as well. And so getting people that had reputable names, reputable positions, I felt actually made a really big difference for whether people took me seriously as well. And then the impact on return, I looked back at my application and I felt that this was a really big strength of my application that I think I would do again. When I was looking at the impact, I tried to look at the different levels that I could make impact. So I started with one sentence that was about the direct impact, the students I work with, the people I could hand the information on to. I then did one sentence about the industry impact, how I could impact my industry wider than the people I see every day. Then one on how it impacts the community beyond my own industry. And then one on how I believe this could actually impact the larger Australian community as well. And when I got to the interview process, I felt like that was really a part that was really honed in on. So that first interview, there were questions about specific technical knowledge, but the passion and the vision seemed to be the thing that really made a difference. Big picture visions of the fact that if we teach trans singers to sing better, we get more trans singers on public stages. Visibility can then lead to higher levels of acceptance, which can actually lead to change in kind of government processes when we have higher acceptance across Australia. I think that big pie in the sky thinking was something that was appreciated at the Churchill Fellowship and was something that I really enjoyed as well. So I think the last thing I would say about the interview process is, even though it was an arts panel, I did have to assume that being so niche that the people on the arts panel wouldn't necessarily understand the importance of what I was doing and why it was so difficult to find that in Australia. So I started my first interview with a little bit of a life story, a real life story. And I started by explaining a student that had come into my studio after undergoing testosterone and had a different sized larynx than what I had been used to in my training, and was looking to go out and perform, and how I didn't have the right tools to support that student. And I feel that was a really quick way to get across the real life impact of maybe something that not everybody would understand if they're not in that specific industry. So I know this is a lot of information very, very quickly. I could talk about the Churchill Fellowship all day, as I'm sure you can tell, but I really do think this is probably one of the best things I've done with my life. It took a lot to think about this process, and I really planned it all before I started the application process so that I could have a clear vision. And it also helped that when I went into the interviews and actually doing it, I felt that early work made everything else feel very organic because I knew what I wanted to do rather than trying to develop it as the process went on. So I hope that's been helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you so much, Christine.
Thanks, Nadine. And sorry, I was muttering. One of our people online was saying they couldn't hear, and I was like, is someone helping Ingrid? I hope it's settled down. And another person came online and said, oh, I missed the beginning bit. And so I'll just say this session is going to be posted on our YouTube channel, so please don't worry. And if for whatever reason you're having hearing problems here, maybe go and watch one of the other sessions because we've done these in a number of other disciplines as well. So, and we kind of largely cover the same sorts of things. The fellows always have different things that they like to highlight, which is really terrific. So don't worry if you came in late or you've been having a few technical difficulties. I will just say we've got some questions around, I'm a caregiver, I've got family and caring responsibilities. We always say to people, we are not a wage replacement. The allowance we give you is very generous, but it is not about your wage replacement. So for people who are self-employed and have other responsibilities, we really encourage you to go away and have a think, what are my personal circumstances? How could I make this work? What are the other supports that are available in my life that might make this possible? Is this the right year? Do I have small kids going to school? Do I have aged parents? Do I have my dog who is getting older? You know what I mean? Everyone's life is rich and messy and individual to you. And so we just say to people, we've been doing this for 60 years. If 2026 is not your year, that's okay. We will be here next year. And quite a number of people do take a couple of years to think about their project and really kind of hone in on some things. We also have lots of stories about people who've applied and been unsuccessful initially. And, you can learn a lot by going through the process. Because of the numbers we get, we cannot give individual feedback to unsuccessfuls. Like the team here is very small, but there's quite a good written document on our website about advice to unsuccessfuls. So I actually also encourage people to go and have a bit of a read of that because, you might glean something from that as well. I just got asked online what was my fellowship, and I love the fact that you think I'm a fellow, but I'm not. I'm just lucky that I get to run the program. The average success rate for applicants is 1 in every 10. So it's a pretty high bar. People like Nadine are pretty special and unusual. Now, we've had a few questions about people coming from academic backgrounds, and I think I was pretty clear that you don't have to have an academic background. It's okay if you do have an academic background. I would really encourage you to think about this process quite differently to an academic thesis. We don't want a thesis. We don't want you to tell us that it's part of your PhD because the reality is PhD students have so many different options. It doesn't rule you in, it doesn't rule you out, but the all walks of life ethos is really important to us, that people who might otherwise not get that opportunity, as Nadine was kind of highlighting. We like niche, we like interesting. The benefit piece, and someone was asking, I just saw in the chat about, it's sort of employer driven, but I'm sort of the individual. When we talk about what's the benefit to the community, you have to explain who's the community and how is it going to benefit them. So a community for you might be your local football team or your local netball team or your local book club, I don't know, or it might be the whole of the state of Victoria, or it might be the whole of Australia. It's however you define it, and you've got to be able to explain that in a compelling way. And I talk a lot about the best applications tell the compelling story. We get lots of applications saying, oh, there's this really great conference and I'd really get to network with everyone. That's just not a compelling story, right? Anyone can go to a conference and meet lots of people. There might be a conference included in your itinerary, but the best stories, the best applications have a story where it all knits together and it builds on each other and you layer on things. And Nadine, you were saying, I really love that point about just leave yourself a bit of time because people will come to you and say, you really need to go and meet this other person, or are you in town for a few more days? And you can go and do that. So, I think you touched on that really nicely.
Yeah, I think I didn't quite understand that at the time, how much information you're getting, how long it takes to process that. And I actually did a lot of my fellowship on Zoom because there were other people when I was over in America that people wanted me to meet with. So I would do my things during the day and do Zooms at night with people in other parts of the country. And you can see the photos across my fellowship. I look more and more tired as I go across. But I think, yeah, really having that time to actually process the information and take up the extra opportunities is very important too.
And we always say to people, it's a fellowship program. Kind of treat it roughly like you would your job, 5 days of work and 2 days to rest and recover and think. It's okay if you're in Beijing to go and look at the Great Wall. We work pretty hard with our fellows so that their itineraries won't kill them and that they come back with some capacity to have survived the experience and thrived in the experience. We have funny stories of people come back who haven't had time to do their washing. I'm just like, wow, it's pretty wild. So, yeah, be sensible and kind to yourself. And as Nadine said, like the amount of information you are taking in, we really, really encourage people to take notes and do some of their journaling. Use AI. There's this great app called Otter that all the fellows swear about on. At the end of your day, just jot it all down so that you've got that contemporaneous note taking. One question that's come up a couple of times I can see, we don't do splits by the arts category and agriculture category. There's a notional split based on state population levels, so that's kind of the rough way we do it. Some years we get more arts applications, some years we get less, some years we get more in agriculture. So it's because it's a living fellowship program, we get all sorts every year. The one question that I haven't had yet, and I'm going to take it head on, is can I travel with someone else? Nadine, did you have any thoughts on this?
I traveled with my husband at the time, so it wasn't something that was supported by the Churchill. Obviously, the money I was paying for a hotel, he was there as well. It was fantastic. It was having somebody to work out where we were going to get dinner from, so I didn't have to worry about that. Having somebody who could take the bags to the hotel while I had a meeting, I actually found that support really important. And as somebody who is an external processor, being able to do things through the day and talk about them with someone over dinner, I felt like really consolidated the learnings of that day. And I think I would have struggled to not be able to do that with anyone.
Yep.
That being said, a lot of the people you visit make plans for you.
Yeah.
So I asked one person, I said, I've got these 3 days. Could you tell me when you're free to meet up? And she actually planned a 3-day full itinerary and a road trip in there. So I had to kind of say goodbye to the husband and just go on a road trip with her. So if you don't have someone, yeah, I think you will have a lot of company. People are very accommodating to that.
And I've heard everything from exactly what you just said. It made it a lot easier. I felt supported to, nope, this is my one and only chance to be really selfish and to really have this time for me. I will say, whatever choice you make, it will radically change your fellowship travel experience, right? We're not for it, we're not against it. But if you're traveling with someone, particularly young children, it will limit that ad hoc, oh, come and do this. It will change what that looks like. Anyone that travels with you is at your own cost. We are a charity. We manage our money really, really carefully. And so there is no provision in your fellowship for us to fund your family traveling with you. What we do find is, and kind of it's a bit of a halfway measure, is maybe they come and meet you at the end. I don't know, have a holiday at the end. You can have a little bit of a holiday at the end. Our insurance will cover you for a set number of weeks after your fellowship end date. But, don't come to me and say, well, I'm going to spend 12 months overseas and 4 or 8 weeks, that'll be the fellowship. That's not the fellowship. That's a life adventure for you. That's a gap year for you. That's not what our fellowship program's about. And we're really proud and protective of our fellowship program in that sense. So, I don't know.
I
Nadine,
have to answer a question that just came up
yeah,
before about the report
yeah,
after.
yeah,
I think one of the great things about the Churchill Trust is there is a lot of flexibility in how you do that report. So the way that you actually present it, I found originally the flexibility was a little overwhelming because I just wanted to be told how to do it. But it actually ended up being really great because I could consider who I wanted the information to go to. And because I was thinking about the information going directly to the trans community as opposed to the academic community, people who already had a huge amount of knowledge in the area, I think that really helped me work out how I wanted to present it. So it ended up being more of a book with stories and lots of pictures and glossaries and things like that, something that anybody could pick up and use. So I definitely would say thinking about who your audience is probably will help dictate how you shape that. But it took me a lot of time to do. And I'm very proud of the outcome, but it did take longer than I thought it would.
yeah. And we try and really encourage people not to let the prospect of having to do a report when they come back freak them out and make them think they won't apply. They really don't have to be written PhD thesis. We're pretty flexible about how you do your report. We want you to be able to tell the world who you met, what did you talk about, what are some of the things you learnt, and how you're going to use that. And that's really the basis of it. We've got podcasts, we've got coffee table books, we've got all sorts of things. And in the art space, I saw, one of our Northern Territory fellows did the most beautiful coffee table book of all her photography, with the stories that go with it. So last year we gave a fellowship to someone who was a hat maker. So I'm pretty sure her report might look like some hats. So really, really fascinating stuff. So
I definitely just got too excited in writing a whole book. I think there was just so much I was excited about that I overdid it.
yeah. Another thing that we say to people when they're thinking about whether to apply is if you know a Churchill Fellow, and a lot of people do, go have a chat to them. They're pretty generous with their time and they can often help you really crystallize your thinking.
I just saw a few questions come up.
Go for it.
I have a little QR code for my book, which I say my book, it's just, I printed it in books because I was so proud of it. It feels like such an achievement. But I can absolutely add the QR code to this at the end as well. I think one of the challenges I had when I was choosing where to go was at the time there weren't clear organisations that had the answers. It was more individual people. Jeff's asked if there was a specific organisation I went to. I would say the thing I found more beneficial was going to particular researchers. So I went and saw someone called Dr. Felix Graham, who is a trans researcher. So they're trans themselves and they're doing research that is not actually in an institution for many reasons that a lot of trans people might struggle to get positions in institutions. And I found that they were so open with the knowledge that they gave me, speaking not only about the pedagogical implications of things that happen with hormone therapy, but also the social challenges and the organizational challenges. So I felt like having those personal stories was far more impactful when I came back and was advocating for change, when I could talk about specific people's experiences as opposed to just a general idea. So I would say that was probably the most beneficial one for me, but there are lots of different stories that all came together and crossed over to give me some really important information. And then the other question that was up was, what have I done since I got back? I was telling Christine this before, but as soon as I announced that I got the Churchill Fellowship, so it was 2020, so I didn't travel then for reasons that are probably obvious. As soon as I announced it, opportunities just started coming straight away. So within a month of me announcing that I'd got the Churchill Fellowship, I was offered a research position at a university in Australia to do research in this particular area, which I'm still doing. So it's actually the first of this kind of research in Australia that is coming out later this year. And that was actually because of the name of the Churchill Fellowship supported me in doing that. And then people took on from there. So I've since come into much more leadership positions and have been able to advocate for changing organizational structures. So things like basic things, adding pronouns to the signatures of a national singing teaching organization, having that as something we do all the time, actually engaging trans researchers in any work around trans people. So, not about them without them, that kind of strategy as well. And I definitely think it's the name and the weight and the honor that a Churchill Fellowship carries that actually validated me as a person and meant people gave me opportunities. So yeah, the ball hasn't stopped rolling since the day I announced that I got a Churchill Fellowship.
Yeah. It's it's a great thing, right? It opens up so many really rich and life-changing opportunities. Now, I'm just having a look at the questions that are coming through. At the time of your application, did you have specific interviewees already listed? I'm not sure I understand the question. We get all of the applications in. Once the round closes, then we do shortlisting. We have panels of assessors around the country, and they will determine who goes through for interview. And as I said before, in the smaller states, it'll be one interview. In the larger states of New South Wales and Victoria, it will be 2 interviews. Our assessment panels are volunteers and we do not disclose their names. They are, in particular, the bigger states, we theme them according to these categories that we're talking about. But we really go for a cross section of people because it's not so much about being necessarily an expert on your topic. What we're experts on is what makes a great Churchill Fellow. And so we're looking for your personal attributes, your ability to come back and be a change maker. So that's kind of the broader lens that we put on things. Oh, I think that question's now been clarified. Do you in your application need to know exactly who you're going to be talking to? And that is the point I was saying about the 70-30. Some people will know exactly. And some people will be going, well, I want to go and talk to this institution, but I'm not really sure who's going to be around. And so that's that kind of 30% that's kind of left there because we understand that things change. And yeah, it's an unfolding journey. And as Nadine said, you ask one person and they come up with a 3-day program for you.
Yes, I definitely wrote in mine who I wanted to see because I wasn't seeing big organizations. I wrote down the individual person and then specifically what I wanted to talk to them about. I don't know if other people have done that, that's just my experience, but I think that showed that I had a plan that was clear to me. And then there were people in the end that I couldn't see because they weren't around or I emailed them and they just never would get back to me. So it seemed that the trust was fine with me then adapting that because in the 2 years in between when I couldn't travel, there was still someone new popped up. And so I was able to adapt it later. But I think it was good to have a vision at the start as opposed to I'm going to go to the UK and talk to some.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's right. Like people who just say, I want to go to the UK and I'll find someone. I mean, you're competing against other people who have got a much more structured kind of approach. And I feel a bit mean because, we had an added degree of difficulty with the global pandemic for you. So that was really, yes. So I just see, do we pay for these interactions? No. We don't pay fees for people to meet with our fellows. We pay your fellowship allowance to you, but we don't pay people a fee to meet with you. We do, I really encourage you, a lot of fellows take little gifts to say thank you. And, the stories we hear are that people are just incredibly generous with their time, happy to talk to you, happy to make connections for you. So, yeah.
People seemed very honored to be asked. And I know in America didn't know as much about the Churchill Fellowship. So when I approached people, I actually sent some information for them to look into it. Whereas in the UK, people know what the Churchill Fellowship is. And yeah, a lot of people were extremely honoured to even be asked to be involved with it. So I don't think anyone was expecting anything from me. They were just very generous, which is so lovely.
Yeah, I can see that we've got that itinerary question again. It's just such a common one that we get. Again, I just say 70-30. That's, my rough rule of thumb. The more specific you can be, the better. I'm just looking at the questions. Are you looking at them too, Nadine? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say 30% is aspirational. I think you should put down what you think you're going to do, but just we accept that there will be some changes as you nail down things. And particularly if there is a bit of a gap, like if you are selected in September this year, but you're not traveling till May or June next year, we understand that the world moves on between in the space of a year. There is no average time. It's got to be for a minimum of 4 weeks, it's got to be for a maximum of 8 weeks. So, and about 1,000 people apply each year.
I will say that my experience of the interview process was that it went really, really fast, and the interview panel have quite specific questions. So from the application, if they feel like, oh, you haven't quite explained enough here, they would often ask questions about it. So I think having a really solid picture in my mind made me feel really confident to be able to concisely answer those questions and perhaps instill confidence in them. So I think having that solid picture, but knowing it's going to change, made me feel more comfortable about the process. But again, everyone is so lovely. I think the Churchill Trust wants your project to be great. They want to facilitate fantastic projects. So I felt like they were almost not leading me to things, but they were giving me the opportunity to tell them how great it was as opposed to testing me. So it was a lovely experience to go through those interviews.
Yeah, and the panels are great, right? These are people who absolutely want. They're giving back through donating their time to the fellowship program. So there's no gotcha in it. It's not a gotcha interview. It's a tell us your story and why you'd make a great fellow and why this matters. Yeah. Can I apply with the aim to inform a specific professional field? Yes, is the answer. You can apply like that. Yep. What else? I'm applying for travel associated with a project that I've already begun. Our fellowships have to be standalone. We're really protective of our program, and so you need to kind of have that in your mind. I guess never say never, but the most compelling cases kind of can say this is why this fellowship is worthy in and of itself. So it's not just another chapter in a string of other things that you're doing. Lots of people build on stuff that they've done in their careers. Lots of people build on things that they've already done, but the fellowship's pretty precious to us. So, yeah.
There's a question about the topic not aligning with the profession,
Yep.
but being something they're passionate about. I think that my work, while I did do some of that, the actual network for working with trans singers in Australia was basically zero at the time. So I couldn't really demonstrate a really clear network in that sense. But I think being able to explain how I was going to impact on the way back, which for me included things like giving free workshops to the community, connecting with certain organizations that I had a little bit of history with, but maybe wasn't super close with. So I think there would still be an element of how do you, if you find out something fantastic, how do you actually get it to the community and make an impact with it, even if that's not your profession? But I don't know what your thoughts are, Christy.
Yeah, look, I just tell people just don't get too hung up on the categories because the projects we do are so multifaceted. Do your best, as Nadine said, to kind of be clear about what you think. Like everything, life's rich and messy in a good way. In a good way. Yeah. Again, I've been asked the question about domestic travel, and the answer is really no. This is an internationally focused fellowship program. There are other fellowship programs and grant programs out there. So, yeah, I just think it's better for me to be upfront with you. May I apply to do research for a video script? I think we would need to understand the nature of that project pretty carefully. So now there's a few questions there, and people are typing answers. The team here's typing answers. We've got a couple of minutes left. I usually say to people, I'm giving you a 5-minute warning. And then sometimes we get hit with the deluge, and then sometimes we get hit with nothing. I'm giving you all a 5-minute warning. And of course, as I said before, this we posted online. Other ones are posted online. We're doing face-to-face sessions in a lot of capital cities. And of course, there's so much information on the website. I can just assure you that choosing the right category is not going to be the thing that rules you in or rules you out. I cannot repeat it often enough. Do not worry about it. I know that people feel incredibly passionate about their topic. We are looking for the person, the project, and your ability to translate ideas into action. So it's really the categories should not be the thing that drive you.
There's a question about how can you assess whether you've exhausted the Australian research. There was, again, very little in Australia when I did my application. So I spoke about the fact that there was very little. I mentioned that I had done some online courses, that I had done practical work, that I'd read research online. And I think the thing I tried to get across was essentially that I'm not starting with the Churchill Fellowship. That's not the first thing I'm doing to go over and see what's out there, that I've already tried to see what's out there and I can't, which is why I went to the Churchill Fellowship.
Yeah, as I say, each one's so different. It's really horses for courses, and hopefully no more global pandemics to make them even harder. So I'm just so you all know, we have answered about 80 questions in the Q&A, and plus all the other information that we've given you. So this has been a pretty good session. I've just been asked if you've already got an international travel scholarship from elsewhere, will it count against you? The answer is no. I will just simply repeat, one of the things that we love is being able to help people who might not get a scholarship from somewhere else. So I'm not saying it counts against you, but the panel will have a view on how many people we can help. Yeah. And the questions and answers will be largely covered in our Q&A document, which is on the website. If you go to churchilltrust.com.au and there's a tab there called Becoming a Fellow, you'll get a lot of this Q&A there, or you can re-watch this when it's posted on our YouTube channel. I feel like we've almost exhausted the questions, hopefully in a good way.
I definitely found reaching out to fellows was so informative before as well, particularly if you've got the time. On the website, they've got all their past Churchills listed. They've got the reports and things they've done. And I actually reached out to a few people who are in similar areas, even if it wasn't quite in the arts, but somebody who'd done something in medicine, and reached out and got some advice from people. And I found that was extremely inspiring and also very helpful. Someone told me I could use dot points in the application, which really helped me for that tight word count. And so I thank them for that advice.
All right. What percentage of applications are invited to interview? Maybe 20%. And then from the 20%, we get down to the 10%. It sort of varies by year, really. We will help you get to the interview if you need to travel to do that. People in the north coast of New South Wales will be interviewed in Sydney. And again, about 1,000 applications a year. Okay. We have no more live questions. We have 2 minutes to go. I think I'm going to say thank you, Nadine. There's nothing like hearing from people like yourself. And we really appreciate our fellows give back so generously to us and to other people who might become fellows one day. I wish you all the very best in your deliberations. And as I say, if this is not your year, that's okay. Come see us next year. We're right up for it. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. See you.